Thanks so much. So, first of all, those two are amazing. Can we get one more round of applause for Nathan and Adam? Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's an incredible introduction. I hope I can live up to it. I want to tell you a little about the selfie stunt. I have two young daughters at home, 7 and 9. We have a tough time connecting on a lot of things. They often ask me, what is it that I do at work? And so rather than try to explain what we do here, often I just take a selfie or take a picture and show them what I do at work. And so that, along with the fact that we also have a tough time connecting on music, and there's a couple of songs in the world that we can connect on. They're hashtag sisters, I'm AC/DC, but in this particular case, Back in Black is the one song that we can connect on because of the movie Megamind. So, this is how I can sort of bring my daughters into it a little bit. I'm so happy to be a part of the chef community, and I gotta tell you, right off the bat, I so respect the people that sit in this room right now and all of the people that are back home working hard to do the things that you're doing. I've been a fan of the DevOps movement because of a bunch of things. First of all, the technology, but also the way that it empowers people, individuals, to promote cultural change as well as technology change in organizations. And so what I saw in Chef when I was considering joining and when they were considering having me on board was really more than just technology. It was an opportunity to be a part of some of the most important shifts that are going to happen in the IT industry in my 20-year career. We just heard from Barry, and he talked about being digital native, about being a technology company first that does something else as your business, right? And he took us through the sort of the FedEx example and gave us a little management consulting for free on the side, which I think is awesome. And I want to combine that with a theme that I saw from ChefConf last year. This is my first ChefConf, but I've done my homework, and I've sort of seen the body of work that's out there. And if we think back to Adam's presentation last year, in typical Adam fashion, it started with sort of a crazy story about ore pulverizers. And for those of you that weren't at ChefConf or haven't seen this, an ore pulverizer is some machine that was invented in the 19th century that a couple of people invented different versions of it. And somehow, his story ended up in this really powerful metaphor about how hard it is to get to space, okay? And for me, the translation is it's hard to become that company that looks like you're digital native. It looks like you're a technology company first when you come from a traditional industry. And I've been there in my own career as well. And so this is a metaphor that really resonates with me. And I'd like to continue this storyline a little from last year. And I asked the question, how do we get to space? I want to tell you about our vision for how companies can become technology companies that deliver banking or coffee or fly airplanes or whatever it is that you do. And ask the question, not just how can you as individuals get to space, or how can your company get to space? But more importantly, how can we all get to space together? How do we create an industry movement that allows us to all get to that point of being digital native? And there's some underlying themes here. It's going to come from scalability and repeatability, as Barry said. Ford doesn't build cars individually. They build them in a pattern, right? It's going to come from simplifying our landscape because there's a lot of complexity in our IT landscape and architecture out there, and we need to figure out how to simplify that to some patterns and some abstractions that are really powerful. It's going to come from nailing some of the digital table stakes, like effortless infrastructure, as an example. And it's going to come from fundamentally thinking differently about how we empower innovators with tools and processes and help them drive change in their organization as much as the technology underneath it. So, conventional wisdom changes over time. If you go back to the beginning with Chef, the IT landscape 10 years ago, as they were just talking about on the stage, was completely different than it is today. A lot has changed between then and now. In fact, one truth is that everything we know to be true today will change. I guarantee it. And here's an example. In 1998, the conventional wisdom was don't get into strangers' cars, and don't meet people on the internet. Today, we literally summon strangers from the internet so that we can get into their car. Okay? It's just a great example of, by the way, it's a great quote, and it's Creative Commons as well, so you're welcome to rip it off as I did in this presentation. It's just a really great example of how something that we would have never thought could change would change, radically. And if we translate that back to our technology world, our thinking at Chef about how infrastructure, compliance, and application automation come together, that's also changed. I'd like to share with you, or we'd like to share with you, what we see as some of the emerging patterns in these areas that drive us forward towards this goal, this ultimate goal of continuous automation. Okay, so we're back in 2018 now. We're at ChefConf. We're more focused than ever. These are themes that you've heard of in the past, and they're themes that we're going to continue to evolve and iterate on going forward. Continuous automation, effortless infrastructure, any app, anywhere. In the past, many of these discussions have been about those specific domain areas as independent functions. But part of where our thinking has started to evolve is how do we bring those together into the ecosystem that gives us continuous automation in the enterprise. The diagram that you see up here is an evolution of our thinking around product architecture, and by extension, there's some implication around maybe reference implementation architecture as well. But I like to refer to this as a marketecture diagram at best, right? It's sort of an abstraction. And what it really represents is you recognize the boxes. There's an orange box for infrastructure, there's a blue box for compliance, there's a green box for application automation. What's changed here is that it represents a rebalancing of how we think about those components. That infrastructure automation and application automation go together, and there's actually a connection point between the two of them, but also a separation of concerns between the two of them. That compliance automation is something that belongs across the entire stack, from the bottom of your infrastructure to the top of your application stack, and from all the way from your development environment through the pipeline to your production environments as well. And we didn't come to this sort of realization sort of magically out of the blue. It came from the work that we've been doing with customers over the past year and beyond, and being really reflective of what we see as some of the challenges and patterns that customers are experiencing as they use the technology that we at Chef produce and the community produces to try and solve some of these problems. Okay, so what's different about this thinking? Obviously, there's boxes on the diagram, and they look like the boxes we've seen in the past. First thing that I'd like to say is it's not about the tech. And believe me, we've been working hard at Chef to make a ton of enhancements to the tech that fits into those boxes, right? But really, the shift in thinking is about how do we apply the content on top of the technology, and where are the boundaries that that content should live. Simplifying your content, simplifying your infrastructure automation so that it does the thing that it's supposed to do extremely well and in a pattern-esque way. Creating a separation of concerns between infrastructure and application automation, because there's slightly different problem sets to solve. And of course, sprinkling DevOps or SecOps across everything and compliance across everything in the workflow. Streamlining these workflows so that it works well together. I really believe in putting a declarative task in the hands of the right parties. So infrastructure in the hands of operations, applications in the hands of developers, and if those two happen to be the same in your organization, then of course they should be able to work together, right? There's a few principles that I'd like to talk about that I think are really important about a longer-term vision of where we could be in the future. I have this dream. I don't know if it's reality at some point in the future, but I have this dream where there's this world where where developers can make a single code line change to their source code and watch that automatically ripple across the entire environment and measure what happens at the other end, right? Did the change that I make actually get out to the production environment and look the way I thought it was going to look when I did it, right? Today, that's tough because we make 1,000 changes, and then we run it through this pipeline, and we hope that it comes out at the other end, but it's really reliant on the complexity of the changes and the things that happen in between. And if we can make changes smaller and more atomic, it'll be easier for us to push them through those pipelines and be reliable and confident in what comes out the other end. The corollary to atomic is isolation. The more that we can isolate a change, the more quantitatively we can assess the impact, the more confident we can be in the outcome that we expected at the other end. So those two principles, smaller changes or atomic changes and isolation, I think are really an important part of continuous automation. Maybe we don't think about that in the past, but if you think about the way that you manage an operating system, you don't go out and change 47 different things and then hope that it actually works the way you thought. When you're debugging, you change one thing at a time, you measure. You change one thing at a time, you measure. And so there's a foundation to this that really gets you to a point where if you do this well and the pipelines are automated and the workflows are streamlined, you can get to a maximum velocity of change to operationalization, right? You may have heard of this theory. It's actually called DevOps, right? So this is the embodiment of DevOps at the end of the day. And the gating physics to this in most organizations, in being able to do small atomic and isolated changes that are well measured, is really the latency of the pipelines that we have to get the change all the way out to the production environment. And so, the latency of the pipelines to process, build, test, and promote the change is too hard right now. And if we can streamline that, I think it's going to change the game for everybody. And so that's part of the underpinnings of why it's really important for infrastructure, compliance, and application automation to work together like a smooth machine. Okay, we're going to do some demos here today. I'm really excited about that. Before we did that, what I wanted to do is give you a snapshot in the form of like a logical architecture diagram to sort of lay out the map of the stuff that we're working on. But here's the thing. We tried to draw it. We tried to draw it like 5 or 6 times. And what I wanted was for us to draw the picture on the left-hand side of the screen. Well, my left-hand side of the screen, the right-hand side of the screen for you. What we got was the other picture every time we drew it, right? And so after about 4 or 5 iterations, I basically gave up. I said, look, we're not going to draw the thing for you. And by the way, I think the picture on this side of the screen, your left-hand side of the screen, is actually probably more representative of what you have in your IT estate than the one on the other side. We all want that one. What we have is this one, right? And so rather than draw it out, I'll just tell you a little about the complexity here. We got everything sprinkled into this demo environment. It's a for real demo environment. We've got AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. We got container services. We got Windows. We got Linux. We got workstations abound. We got all kinds of stuff going on in this demo environment. So it's going to be awesome and a little bit of a high wire act, but let's get going. To help me take you on this demo journey, I'd like to invite 2 awesome chefs to the stage. Nell Shamrell-Harrington, who's a senior software development engineer on our Habitat team. Thank you, yeah. And Mike Krasnow, who's a product manager for our infrastructure automation team. Right. Cool.
Hi, Corey.
Okay. While they get set up, we're going to take a look at how this looks in real life. We're going to show you a little what we think continuous automation is. But first, I want to just say, I'd like you to please do me a favor. I need you to suspend disbelief for the next 15 minutes or so, okay? I need you to open your mind because I know that I need you to imagine a world where your company or organization has the ability to reach space and to adopt with confidence like these really cutting-edge continuous automation pipelines to a degree that it would allow you to get to the state that we're going to show you today. We've thrown a few of the conventional best practices out the window, so take a deep breath on that. And remember a few minutes ago when I said that everything that you know to be true today will change at some point in the future? This might be a little insight into what change looks like on that front. Okay, if we could bring up the demo screen, please, if you're good to go, Mike.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, take it away, Mike.
All right, hi, friends. It's a lot of friends out there. Hi. So what I want to show you all today is born of a ChefConf Hack Day project from last year. So we were thinking about how do we bring together these pieces of application automation, of compliance automation, of infrastructure automation. How do we pull it all together? We were thinking about the fact that the configuration of your infrastructure is really just another dependency that your application has, right? And we've got this great product that is really good at automating the management of your application dependencies, this little thing we call Habitat. So why not put it to use here to manage your infrastructure? So what we're going to do is I've got Habitat running with a Habitat plan, where the artifact that Habitat uses to define the application, in this case, is a policy file. For those of you that aren't familiar with policy files, this thing that has existed at Chef for a long time, so that Chef client can lock in the dependencies of all of the cookbooks that run when it does its thing. And then a dependency of that plan is the Chef client itself. In that run list in the policy file is the DevSec Linux baseline scan. So we're going to scan some nodes and make sure that they meet that Linux baseline. So that's what we've got. We spun it up backstage a while ago. Didn't want to make you all sit and watch Terraform do its thing. And so hopefully now we should have a couple of nodes that are checking in and passing their scans. So let's go check in Chef Automate. And we'll see here I've got a node called Dev1, and it's compliant. So cool, everything's great, right? What was that earlier about creating chaos? Should we create some chaos?
Absolutely.
So we had this process a while ago at Chef, just internally in our engineering department, that was changing permissions on a directory and causing all kinds of havoc. So for the purpose of this demo, I'll cause some havoc manually here. Let's just change permissions on a directory, maybe. That's probably not anything important, right? Let's do that one. So what's going to happen now is I set the Chef client run to run almost continuously. Usually it doesn't run all the time, but for the purpose of this demo, it's running pretty constantly in the background. And it's going to give me an alert when that compliance check fails. And it'll tell me, hey, there might be some permission. Oh, look, there it is. There's some permission issues here. I wonder what's going on. Who could have done that? Let's go take a look. So you can see here in Chef Automate, I got this nice report that tells me that I've got some owner and permissions issue on a directory, or on a file in this case. So cool, everything. So now what you don't see is when that notification kicked off, what it also kicked off was a little bit of automation magic. So what we're gonna try to do now is automate the remediation of that. So when that notification fired, what we also did is we kicked off a merge, a little bit of code to add another cookbook to the run list. This cookbook is our hardening cookbook, so it's kind of the complement to the scan. It makes sure that the node is hardened and stays hardened as the Chef client runs. So that Chef client gets added to the run list, and then we rebuild with Habitat. So we should, if we go over to Habitat, we should see that the package is being rebuilt. Let's go see if that's happening. Cross your fingers here. There we go. So the build is in process. You can see it's doing its magic here, and it's still working. That takes just a few minutes. While that's running, I can't help but show you some other cool things we're working on. So some of you may have noticed, if you're using Chef Automate today, that this Chef Automate I'm showing looks a little bit different. Well, it's actually a lot different. What we're releasing here pretty soon, today, is a new version of Chef Automate where we rebuilt the platform from the ground up. We rebuilt it using Habitat, not surprisingly. But really, the goal here is to make sure that we give you something that gives you actionable insights at scale. So not only do we give you nice reports like this, but we also can do this when you have tens of thousands of nodes. So here you can see I've got some nice compliance results. One of the other things I'm really excited about is this event feed. So you can see in real time the changes that are happening on your system and who changed them. Another thing that's really cool is when you want to do scans of nodes that are in AWS or in Azure coming very soon, rather than add the credentials of those nodes individually, you could go to this integrations thing here that's new. You can add an integration and put in your AWS credentials here. So you put in your credentials for your cloud account itself, and then when you go here to create new scan jobs, rather than having to add the nodes individually, when you create a new job, it can pull it from your AWS account, make it super easy for you to scan those nodes. All right, so let's go check on that build, see how it's going. Looks like the build is done. So what it should do now the build is done, it should kick off a new Chef client run. It should install that hardening cookbook, run the cookbook, and then rerun the scan. So if everything's
going to work?
I'm crossing my fingers here.
Okay.
If it doesn't, I've got a video I can play you, but I hope it doesn't come to that. Let's go check the compliance tab here. I've got this Dev1 node, and you can see it's checking in and it's compliant again, so everything's working again.
Fantastic.
So how's that for a little self-correcting infrastructure?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. So I want to just clarify a couple of things. First of all, we saw, I think, two things there. We call it the DCA loop, or the Detect, Correct, Automate loop, which is the idea that you can detect compliance concerns in your environment and you can automatically remediate them with sort of a, what do we call it, self-correcting motion, right?
Self-correcting, yeah.
Self-correcting, fantastic. The second thing that I think I saw, if I got this right, is really the paradigm of using Habitat to deploy Chef policy files and by extension, clients and cookbooks to the environment. Tell us a little about that and how is that different than what we've done in the past?
Yeah, so when you treat Chef client like a dependency of the application, then you can deploy it as part of the application rather than node by node.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, if I think forward to that, it means that if you want to update the client, you can just update the artifacts that the client's pinned to, and Habitat will take care of like rebuilding and redeploying client infrastructure for you as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Mike. That's great. If we can come back to the slides, yeah. So Mike kind of stole my thunder, and we'll talk about that a little later on. But one of our product announcements today is Chef Automate 2.0. It is officially available in the stable channel as of today, and you can get it at automate.chef.io. So fantastic, right? We talked about a few of the many features that are in Automate 2, and I'll just highlight a few of them for you. Actionable insights, I think we saw that from Mike, right? The ability to scan and report on compliance in any environment and making it easier to do that in some of the cloud environments, and we continue to work on those kinds of integrations. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, one of the big things about Automate 2.0 is we really have re-architected it from the ground up with its own microservices architecture. It's important because it gives us speed, but also flexibility, so it becomes the platform for integration that you can use for all of your continuous automation in the enterprise. So that's fantastic stuff. Thank you. Thanks again, Mike. Next, I'm going to talk about Habitat, and we've been doing a lot of work on Habitat in the last year. There's a whole bunch, this is just a small list of the enhancements that have gone into Habitat, but there's a couple of big things that I want to point out. First of all, we heard you as customers. When you looked at Habitat, you said, this is all well and good, but a lot of customers can't take all of their artifacts and stick them in a cloud service, right? And so we've been focused on that as one of the primary blockers to Habitat adoption for the enterprise. And we're announcing today the availability of the on-premises Habitat depot. So a depot that you can install in your local environment, and you can still connect up to the cloud for all of the great package management and core plans that we're doing up there, but something that you can run and manage in your own environment. Second one is Kubernetes operator, and I think Nell's going to show us a little about that in a minute. We've done some great work on Kubernetes integration. We've got a whole laundry list of other things, exporting to things like the Kubernetes service on Azure, exporting directly to Helm charts. We've done some additional work on Open Service Broker integration and Splunk integration with our friends in Seattle at Splunk as well. So there's a whole ton of stuff to see at Habitat. I encourage you to go out and participate in some of the sessions, the workshops, and go and see the booth downstairs to learn more about Habitat and all of the enhancements that we got. In the meantime, I think we're ready to, oh, sorry, can we go back one slide? My bad. Okay, so I think we're ready to see some more demo. Nell's going to take us through some Habitat demo. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right, it's on to you, Nell.
All right, who here loves Kubernetes? Got a few people there. We've got some hands up. Kubernetes and Habitat are like peanut butter and jelly. They're both fantastic things on their own, but when you bring them together, they become something magical and wholesome. So here in front of me, I have an app. It's a Java app, and it uses the Tomcat web server and a MongoDB database to render a map of all the US national parks. Now, I've already created the app. I've already packaged it with Habitat by this point. Now all that's left is getting it running somewhere. And I want to run it in Kubernetes. So I have a Kubernetes cluster currently running in GKE. Let's take a look with my good friend kubectl. And it's calling out. Have faith. There we go. All right, so as you can see, what I'm running currently is the Habitat operator. This is the operator that Corey just mentioned. The Habitat operator is a Kubernetes controller that allows you to seamlessly run Habitat applications in Kubernetes. You get all the good stuff of Habitat, all the good stuff from Kubernetes, all in one place. Now, what's really cool about this operator is it's generic. That means any application that's packaged with Habitat, you can run it in Kubernetes using this operator. You do not need a separate operator for every application. You can use the same operator for every application that is packaged with Habitat.
Yeah.
I think that's worthy of applause.
Give some love to that.
All right, second, I am running the Habitat updater. What this does is this will watch Builder, and whenever I have this is watching the public Builder currently, anytime I upload a new package that's part of my app and I promote it to the stable channel, this will sense that on Builder and automatically pull that into my Kubernetes cluster. So let's take a look at the configuration for this Kubernetes deployment. Let's open that up. And here I have this deployment defined in my habitat.yaml config file, and there's two things I want to highlight. The first is that I'm using two Docker images. I'm using npmongo, that's the image from my MongoDB database. That's available in the Chef demo organization on public Docker Hub right now. If you want to play with it, maybe not right now because we don't want to tank the Wi-Fi, but if you want to play with it later, I encourage you to pull it down and check it out. Second, we have the National Parks app. This is the app that's running with that Tomcat web server, and that is also available in the Chef demo organization on Docker Hub. All right, we've seen our configuration. We've seen what our cluster looks like. Let's get this deployed. So I'm going to go ahead and run kubectl apply f habitat operator. That's the directory I have that config file in, /habitat.yaml. And boom. It's that quick. Let's see what our Kubernetes cluster looks like right now. All right, so I've got two more pods running. I've got my app pod. This is what's running Tomcat, what's running the actual application. And I've got my DB pod, which is running my MongoDB database. Now, before I started this demo, I set up a Kubernetes service load balancer, and that is currently attached to this IP. So let's copy this and head on into my browser. And there's my running application. That's how quick it was to get my application running in Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
And there's more to come. So right now I'm looking at a map of the United States. I'm looking at all the national parks. I can zoom in. Those of you who are here in Chicago with us, who travel from elsewhere, if you want a national parks experience, it looks like the nearest one is the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. Now let's say I finish this app as a developer, I get it deployed, I show it to my business stakeholders, and they say, yeah, I mean, we like how it works, but can you make the colors of the map a little different? Can you mess with the styling a little bit for us? Luckily, I can do that very easily. Let's head back to my terminal. And I have already stashed a few styling changes, so let's run git stash apply. And I'll run git diff, show you what we're changing. So I am bumping my Habitat package version to 6.5.8 in my plan.sh file. And I'm also bringing in a new style sheet. I'm making some other JavaScript changes. I'm just changing the look of it. So let's go ahead and add all these and commit them. New styles. Let's push them to my master branch. And this is pushing to GitHub. There we go. Now, the moment I push this, if I go back to take a look at Builder, let's refresh this. This is where my package is on Builder. Builder automatically started a new build for me. And we can look at the output here. This will build the application, and I've already set up an integration with Docker Hub, so we will automatically push a new image to my Docker Hub place. So I would love to show you this entire build, but let's fast forward a little bit. And let me head on back here, go into my versions. So I pre-baked a new version with these style changes in it. Now, if I want my Kubernetes cluster to pick up that new version, all I have to do is promote it to stable. So let's promote that. All right, it's been promoted. Let's head back to my terminal, and let's run kubectl get all. All right, so right now it's showing me that both the app pod and the DB pod started 3 minutes ago. So that means it hasn't quite picked up the updated package yet. The Habitat updater polls builder every 60 seconds. So let's try it again. Oh, all right, there we got it. There we go. We've got our new container creating. So it sensed that updated package on builder that I had promoted it to the stable branch and started creating a container from it. So let's watch it create that container, and it's already running.
Wow, that was fast.
It was never this fast in rehearsal, so I'm very, very happy to see that. So let's head on back to my browser.
No, you must have made some sacrifices to the demo gods this morning.
Yeah, well, I played whack-a-mole with all the demo demons. Get away.
Fantastic.
Anyway, all right, so let's refresh this, and there we have it. I've got a green map.
Nice. Yeah.
I've got my elevation highlighted, if you're into maps, and also I've changed the color of these pins, but they still work the same. So that is how easy it is with Kubernetes and Habitat to make a change to my application and go through that entire automated pipeline and get it into my Kubernetes cluster. Habitat and Kubernetes, remember, they're like peanut butter and jelly. That means updates to your application can flow through a pipeline effortlessly, as we just saw. Back to you, Corey.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nell. That's really awesome stuff, and I think it really starts to come close to that one code line at a time kind of change mentality with automated pipelines that get it all the way through. I have one last question for you, Nell. So I saw you did that, and it was all great, and you exported it to Hab on a Google Cloud cluster. What if you wanted to export that? What if you wanted to run that same application somewhere else? How much work do you have to do in Habitat to deploy it somewhere else on some other architecture?
Very little. Once you have your Habitat artifact, your heart artifact that Builder builds, you can export that with one command as a Docker image. You can export it as a Kubernetes Helm manifest. Almost anything you can export from that same application. We really embrace the idea of one package that can be run almost anywhere.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you both. That's great stuff. You can go. Thanks. Yeah. That was a real demo, I got to tell you. So it's fantastic that it all came together. The demos are so inspirational. I think it really, really illustrates how parts of the portfolio can come together and work together to really create this continuous automation environment. I can't wait to see how these patterns evolve over time. One final product announcement while I'm still here up on the stage, and we're going to do a little more demo. I really am excited about this one. I want to announce the availability of Chef Workstation in beta as of today. All right? So Chef Workstation is the new desktop experience for Chef. It was born out of the following thing. We listened to you in the community and heard two main things. It was hard to get started with Chef. It took a lot of infrastructure, and you have to set up servers, and there's a whole bunch of things to get started with Chef. And customers wanted an easier way to get started and to get their colleagues started with infrastructure automation. And so Chef Workstation gives us a very simple, download a single binary, install it on your local workstation, and get going kind of paradigm. The second part of it was you told us that you wanted an easier way to do ad hoc tasks in the world of infrastructure automation. So we took that as one of the very first use cases for Chef Workstation, and we created a way to allow you to do ad hoc tasks in a super simple way. And so to highlight a little more of this, I want to bring out one more demoer. I'm going to invite to the stage Seth Thomas, who's an engineer on the dev team for Seth Workstation. Seth, come on out. Fantastic. Hey, hug. All right, man.
Oh, doing good.
All right. So we'll give Seth just a second to get set up. Tell me when you're ready to go, and we're going to take a look at Chef Workstation. Right on? Good. Okay, can we bring up Seth's screen?
Howdy, everybody. You probably know me better as Cheese Plus, and I'm going to show you what we've been working on with Chef Workstation. As Corey mentioned, Chef Workstation was born out of that. I want to do something, I'm going to do it quick. I don't want to get started with all the tooling that we normally try and get you using, just because there are ad hoc tasks that you're just going to want to do. So, for the purpose of our example, we're going to set ourselves up a scenario. It's our first day. We're an SRE. We maybe have a little bit of experience with Chef, a little bit of experience with configuration management, but we've just received a help desk ticket. We need to set up 3 Nginx web servers for our web team just to prototype some stuff. A relatively common thing you get asked to do, and we're going to show you how quick that can be with Chef Workstation. So the first thing we would do is go to our new nice little microsite, go ahead and download Chef Workstation. I've already done that because it's a demo, and I don't want to curse the demo gods. So, like I said, this is for ad hoc execution of resources, recipes, and cookbooks. And so we're going to start with resources, which is something that you've probably never seen before. So, this new capability is driven by a command called chef run. We are not married to the name yet, but it's the best name we've come up with, without stepping on other names. So, we're going to run chef run. We've got a node, rel01. We're going to do package, NTP, action install. So this is, everyone needs NTP to get started. So we're going to run this. This is going to go ahead and connect out to rel01. It's going to use SSH for your Linux nodes, WinRM for your other nodes. It's going to automatically download Chef Client to your local workstation, then upload it to the node. It's going to then converge Chef. We're doing a little bit of a converge dance right now. I absolutely love the spinners. We are using a policy file tar ball to actually deploy this change out, so we're actually doubling down on policy files here, and we've just successfully converged on the target. Now I'm not going to log in and show you that NTP was installed because that's relatively tame. So let's go ahead and do a slightly more complex example. We're going to actually run a cookbook. So our team has already written us a nice cookbook. It's called Deploy Website, very creatively. So, very similar syntax. You can also pass recipes directly, so you could put recipe.rb right there if you wanted to. In this case, it's a cookbook. I'm not going to show you any code for this. This is going to set up, install Nginx, set up a little site. So, nice thing is we've already installed Chef Client on this node, and we know that we have. So as soon as it connects, it's going to check to make sure it's installed, make sure it's at a certain version, and then we're going to push the policy file bundle, running Chef. Converge dance, and obey Unikitten.
Yeah.
So most of you have probably installed Nginx on a web server. That's fairly cool. You can do a little quick example, but this particular request, we've been asked to do multiple web servers. So let's actually see what that looks like with Workstation. So we have several different ways to do ranges of nodes. This one I'm using the most clever example. So I can actually connect to rel nodes 0.1 through 0.3, and I'm going to run the same cookbook on all those nodes. Now, this is Chef, so node 1 is going to be nicely convergent because, of course, I wrote the cookbook perfectly. And this is going to connect to all your nodes. And this is all happening in real time, so there's no gating on order. And it's going to apply the policy to nodes 2 and 3, which will take slightly longer because they need to install Chef Client. So we're going to wait for those. Obviously, node 1's already done. We get a nice little checkbox, totally borrowing a lot of beautiful InSpec UX. And we're running Chef. So we've successfully converged on 3 targets. And we have Unikitten across the board.
Nice.
So now we've closed our ticket. That was under 5 minutes that we have done all of that, and you can do even more nodes. We have lots of great features in store for you. This is just a taste of what to come, so please give us your feedback, and thank you for watching Chef run.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Seth. That's great stuff. Before I let you off the stage, just one last question. So that last thing that you did, that was really converging against multiple targets at the same time, and that's a pattern that we support with Chef Workstation.
Yes.
The multiple converge. And you can span that out?
Yeah, so we're actually looking at adding inventory support, so you can actually have a file that will say, here's my entire infrastructure. We have some practical UX limits right now because we don't want to do 300 spinners at the same time, and you probably don't want to see that. But once we've got that, you can do as an arbitrary number of nodes at your pleasure.
Fantastic. Thanks, Seth. Great job. Thanks. Cool. So cool to see how far we've come in making it easier to get started with Chef, right? I mean, really, you can download, install, and do your first ad hoc infrastructure automation tasks in less than 5 minutes. That's a far cry from where we were just a little while ago. It's really about cutting out the complexity of just doing and get right to the doing. It's great stuff. I'm going to ask you all to give all of our demoers one last bit of love because I think they did a great job. Right? All right. So Seth's example is a great example of taking something that used to take hours or even days and making it into something that takes only minutes, right? Our job at Chef is to ensure that the adoption of our technology and our products is as frictionless for you as possible. And if you look at it in the larger picture, and think back to the effortless infrastructure or deploying any app anywhere or any of the actions that we talked about in the demos and in Barry's conversation earlier today, really we're talking about taking things that took days or weeks or even months and turning them into streamlined continuous automation pipelines that take minutes or in some cases seconds, right? And so that's really the goal that we're trying to drive towards because in a truly technology-oriented business, those things should be easy. We should have repeatable processes for it. And we know that your time is precious, that every minute that you spend or every calorie that you spend on that stuff takes away from your time to market, your ability for your business to deliver on what they're trying to do. Complexity adds time and reduces business value, so we've got to reduce the amount of complexity and get more and bring more of this abstraction into the world. Okay. I'm going to take it back to where we talked about continuous automation at the top. Think about how we can all become technology companies as a first principle. I hope that through the demos and the conversation today, you've gotten some insight into our vision that infrastructure automation, compliance automation, and application automation can come together in a blueprint that really allows you to become one of those continuous automation, technology-first kinds of companies. One nugget that I want you to take away from here is that application as the unit of deployment is a game changer. And that's something that if you're not looking into, you should be looking into tomorrow, right? Adam has a main stage session tomorrow that you need to see. I've seen it in advance. And he's really going to dig into the theology and some of the mental recipe that's required for how to become successful in a transformation into a digitally native appearing enterprise, right? A technology-first enterprise. So, I want you to pause for a moment and look around this room. Look to your left, look to your right. You are here this week for a reason. You are surrounded by your peers, your community. You're surrounded by bright minds, a wealth of innovative ideas, boundless creativity and passion. There are already 500 of you, 500, signed up for Hack Day this Friday. Yes, right? That's awesome. This is what we do as a community. I challenge you to harness the power of the collective IQ in this room. We're all here to figure out how to get to space together. Let's start figuring that out this week, today, right now. Have a great ChefConf. Thank you very much.